Today is July 29th. It's the 211th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Details of the most closely guarded secret in fashion history are released in sealed envelopes, to be opened only at the moment when Lady Diana Frances Spencer steps into her glass coach at Clarence House en route to St. Paul's Cathedral on the morning of her wedding, on this day in 1981. Prince Charles and Lady Diana choose to forgo having their royal nuptials at the traditional locale of Westminster Abbey. St. Paul's offers more seating, and it allows Diana's coach to take a longer procession through the streets of London for the benefit of the 2 million spectators lining the route, not to mention the 750 million TV viewers, including yours truly. My sister and I woke up extra early. Couple of kids trying to catch a glimpse of Shy Di, as the press calls her. Diana and her father, the Earl of Spencer, experience a rather uncomfortable ride in the coach, due in large part to the massive poof of her meringue gown, which takes up all of the available space. Once at the cathedral, Diana emerges from the coach and readies herself for the 3.5-minute walk down the aisle, her 25-foot silk train trailing behind her, the longest train in royal wedding history. This adds to the theatricality of the gown, which is dubbed the dress of the century. Diana observes tradition by wearing old antique lace, new silk specially spun at Lullington Silk Farm in Dorset, a borrowed tiara from the Spencer family collection, which apparently gives her quite a headache, and a small blue bow sewn into the waistband of her gown for luck. Diana's bouquet includes traditional myrtle and veronica flowers, which have been cut from bushes grown from cuttings from Queen Victoria's wedding bouquet. Tradition, though, is broken more than it is followed with this wedding. Probably the biggest break from precedent is the bride herself. Diana is the first commoner to marry an heir to the British throne since James II, who marries Anne Hyde in 1659. She's 7 months pregnant with his child at the time. Charles and Diana, much to the chagrin of traditionalists, are the first British royal couple to omit from their wedding vows the customary bride's promise to obey her husband. The wedding vow exchange also proves to be a bit nerve-wracking, causing blunders for both the bride and the groom. Diana mistakenly changes the order of Charles's names when repeating her vows, referring to him as Philip Charles Arthur George instead of the correct Charles Philip Arthur George. I do that all the time. Charles also mistakenly offers her thy goods instead of my worldly goods, and he famously forgets to seal their vows with a kiss at the altar. This blunder leads to a new royal wedding tradition, kissing on the balcony at Buckingham Palace. 5 years later, his brother Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson will emulate this kiss, as does Charles and Diana's son Prince William when he marries commoner Kate Middleton in 2011. By the end of this wedding day in 1981, the royal couple, the Prince and Princess of Wales, have delivered the fairy tale wedding that the world so eagerly anticipated. Our love affair and fascination with this couple, and in particular with Princess Diana, is just beginning on this day. Diana's first official state visit abroad comes in September 1982, when she attends the funeral of Princess Grace of Monaco, who tragically dies in a car crash. 10 years after their wedding on this day in 1981, Charles and Diana separate. Their divorce finalized 5 years later in 1996, and the following year, 1997, Diana, who by then is dubbed the People's Princess, exits the Ritz Hotel in Paris, slides into the back seat of a black Mercedes-Benz, and minutes later suffers fatal injuries from a car crash. She passes away 3.5 hours later in the hospital, 16 years after Shy Di marries her Prince Charming, the marriage of Lady Diana and Prince Charles, on this day in 1981. Patrick, I hope you're listening. I'm sure you are. Because born on this day in 1924, Elizabeth Short. Elizabeth Short is born in Boston, Massachusetts, the third of 5 daughters born to Cleo and Phoebe May Short. When Elizabeth is 6 years old, her father abandons the family after the stock market crash of 1929. His car is found parked on a bridge, his whereabouts unknown. Suicide is assumed until 5 years later, a letter of apology arrives from California. Cleo is alive and working in the Golden State. His relocation lures an already restless teenage Elizabeth to California and ultimately into the history books as the oldest unsolved murder in Los Angeles. Restless is an understatement when it comes to describing Elizabeth. Asthma and bronchitis are reasons enough for her mother to send her away to Florida during the winter months at the formative age of 16. By age 19, Elizabeth travels to Northern California to live with her father. They move south to Los Angeles, but after an argument, Elizabeth ditches Dad and moves north near Santa Barbara. She gets arrested for underage drinking and is sent back to her mother in Massachusetts. Not one to stay put for long, Elizabeth spends the next 3 years bouncing around from state to state. During one of her stopovers in Florida, she meets Major Matthew Gordon. Gordon ships off to the Pacific Theater and, from there, proposes to her in a letter. She accepts his proposal, but sadly for Elizabeth, she doesn't get to walk down the aisle. Major Gordon dies in a plane crash less than a week before the Japanese surrender, bringing World War II to an end. Rootless and depressed, Elizabeth is once again lured back to California, not by her father, but this time by another military acquaintance she met in Florida. She arrives in Long Beach in July of 1946. 6 months later, at the beginning of 1947, she disappears. Last seen in downtown Los Angeles. Elizabeth Short reappears 6 days later, found in an undeveloped lot in the Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles, sliced in half at the waist. The two halves of Elizabeth's body are positioned and displayed about a foot apart. Her face is slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears, creating an effect called the Glasgow smile, even though it's a practice that originates with London street gangs. Ligature marks are visible on her ankles, wrists, and neck. Who did this and why are questions that have yet to be answered all these years later. Theories and speculation overshadow the case. Elizabeth is portrayed as a call girl, even though the LA District Attorney finds no evidence that she ever engaged in prostitution. It's probably her active social life that leads to that speculation. Rumors abound that she is pregnant at the time of her death, but an autopsy reveals that she is not. Relentless media coverage ensues, and the press sensationalize the murder. Reporters at the time are in the habit of giving spicy nicknames to female murder victims or their killers. They dub Elizabeth Short the Black Dahlia. And there are as many theories as to the origin of this nickname as there are to her actual murder. It's thought the nickname is inspired by the film noir murder mystery, The Blue Dahlia, released several months before the bisected Elizabeth is found in Leimert Park. Or it could be a reference to the jet black flowers she wears, or used to wear, in her hair. About 60 people confess to the Black Dahlia murder. The Los Angeles District Attorney considers about half of them to be real suspects, but clears most of them. Over the years, the LAPD investigate the similarities between the Black Dahlia murder and the Cleveland torso murders that take place between 1934 and 1938. As late as 1980, detectives are close to arresting Cleveland torso murder suspect Jack Anderson Wilson for the Black Dahlia murder. But Wilson dies in a fire in 1982. Another theory draws a connection between Black Dahlia and a similar murder in Chicago in 1946. And a more intriguing theory actually connects Elizabeth Short to the Leimert Park neighborhood. Los Angeles historian Larry Harnish suggests that she's murdered by Dr. Walter Bailey, a mentally unstable surgeon who, in 1947, owns a home 1 block south of the empty lot where Black Dahlia is found. And Dr. Bailey's daughter Barbara serves as a witness to the wedding of Elizabeth's sister Virginia. At the time of Elizabeth's murder, Dr. Bailey is involved in a complicated extramarital affair, and after his death in 1948, his lover threatens his widow with the exposure of, quote, terrible secrets. These are but a few of the many Black Dahlia murder theories. By now, the trail is cold, and the players long passed on. The Black Dahlia case, though, remains an open case, and the LAPD still regularly review the evidence, hoping to crack the longest unsolved murder in Los Angeles history, that of the Black Dahlia, born Elizabeth Short, on this day in 1924. There are 155 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. And today's episode was written by Elizabeth Schultz, who happens to be my sister. Many thanks, Eliz. On this day in 1958, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signs the National Aeronautics and Space Act, creating NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. The act Ike signs on this day in 1958 makes it the policy of the United States that activities in space should be devoted to peaceful purposes for the benefit of all humankind. So if you're still listening, #I like Ike. Talk to you tomorrow.